Megyn Kelly is a name that has sparked strong reactions for many years. Some people see her as fearless and sharp, while others see her as controversial and stubborn. No matter where someone stands, it is impossible to deny that her life has been shaped by pressure, public attention, and difficult choices. Over the years, Kelly has lived much of her life in the public eye, but behind the cameras and headlines, her personal life has faced struggles that few truly understand. One of the most talked about chapters of her private life is her first marriage and the quiet divorce that followed. While many online headlines suggest that her marriage ended suddenly or dramatically after one shocking event, the truth is more complex, slower, and deeply human. Her divorce did not happen overnight, nor was it caused by a single explosive moment. Instead, it was a result of emotional distance, different life goals, and the heavy demands of a fast-moving career. Before she became a television personality known to millions, Megyn Kelly was a driven student and a rising lawyer. She valued discipline, ambition, and independence. These qualities helped her succeed professionally, but they also made relationships more complicated. Her first husband, Daniel Kendall, was an anesthesiologist who lived a very different kind of life. While Kelly was chasing long hours, high-stress goals, and professional growth, her marriage required time, emotional readiness, and compromise. As her career ambitions grew stronger, the gap between her personal and professional life grew wider. This growing distance was not filled with loud arguments or public scandals. Instead, it developed quietly, through emotional exhaustion and uncertainty about the future. What makes Megyn Kelly's divorce story important is not scandal, but honesty. She later spoke openly about how she was not emotionally ready to start a family at the time, even though her husband was. This difference alone placed enormous strain on the relationship. When two people want different futures, love alone is often not enough. In Kelly's case, her rising career added pressure, stress, and long absences, leaving little room to work through these personal struggles. Over time, the marriage became less about partnership and more about conflict avoidance. Eventually, both partners recognized that staying together would only cause more pain. This article explores the real story behind Megyn Kelly's first marriage and divorce, without exaggeration or false drama. It explains how her upbringing shaped her ambition, how her career demands affected her emotional readiness, and how quiet incompatibility can end even a respectful relationship. Rather than focusing on rumors or clickbait, this story looks at the deeper emotional truths behind the decision to separate. In doing so, it shows that sometimes the most life-changing moments are not loud or public, but deeply personal and silent. Megyn Kelly was born on November 18, 1970, in Champaign, Illinois, into a family that valued education and discipline. Her father worked as a professor, while her mother stayed home to raise the children. From a young age, Kelly was taught the importance of hard work, structure, and independence. However, her childhood was not without hardship. When Megyn was just 15 years old, her father passed away suddenly from a heart attack. This loss had a powerful effect on her emotional development. Losing a parent during adolescence often forces children to grow up quickly, and Kelly was no exception. She learned to rely on herself emotionally, which later became both her strength and her weakness. After her father's death, her family structure changed. Her mother later remarried, and Kelly gained step-siblings. While this brought new connections, it also reinforced a sense of independence in Kelly. She became accustomed to adapting to change and managing emotional challenges alone. This self-reliance followed her into adulthood and shaped how she approached relationships. Instead of leaning on others, she focused on building her own stability through education and career success. That Kelly's academic journey reflected this mindset. She excelled in school, attended Syracuse University, and earned a degree in political science before going on to law school at Albany Law School. Her path was demanding, but she thrived in environments that rewarded focus and ambition. During these years, personal relationships often took a back seat to professional goals. This was not because she lacked interest in love or family, but because she believed success required total commitment. For Kelly, achievement was not optional. It was a form of security. When she later entered her first marriage, these emotional patterns came with her. While her husband, Daniel Kendall, valued stability and family planning, Kelly was still discovering who she was and what she wanted from life. The emotional independence she had developed over years of loss and ambition made it difficult for her to shift into a role that required vulnerability and long-term planning around children. This emotional gap was not obvious at first, but it slowly became impossible to ignore. Understanding Kelly's early life helps explain why her first marriage struggled. She was not avoiding commitment out of fear, but rather navigating unresolved emotional readiness. Her upbringing taught her to survive and succeed, but not necessarily how to slow down and build a shared future. As her career gained speed, these internal conflicts grew stronger. The foundation of her emotional life, built during childhood loss and reinforced by professional ambition, played a quiet but decisive role in the eventual end of her first marriage. Megyn Kelly married Daniel Kendall on September 29, 2001. At the time, both were successful professionals with promising futures. Kendall worked as an anesthesiologist, a career that demanded precision and responsibility, but offered a more predictable lifestyle than television or media. Their relationship began with optimism and mutual respect. They met in Chicago, connected quickly, and believed they shared compatible values. From the outside, the marriage appeared stable and healthy. However, as time passed, the differences in their goals and emotional readiness became clearer. Kelly has spoken openly about how she was not prepared for the next stage of life that marriage often brings. While Kendall wanted to start a family, Kelly was still focused on building her career and understanding herself. This difference created tension, not because either person was wrong, but because their timelines did not match. Wanting children is not a small decision. It affects identity, lifestyle, and long-term planning. When two partners disagree on this issue, the emotional strain can slowly erode the relationship. At the same time, Kelly's career demands were increasing. Long hours, professional pressure, and constant mental focus left little space for emotional connection. Instead of coming home to rest and reconnect, Kelly often carried work stress with her. Kendall, whose career was also demanding, needed emotional support and clarity about the future. Over time, conversations about family and priorities became sources of stress rather than understanding. What makes this marriage different from many public divorces is the lack of scandal. There were no public fights, no cheating accusations, and no dramatic confrontations. Instead, the marriage ended quietly in 2006 after 5 years. Kelly later described the divorce as peaceful and respectful. Both partners recognized that staying together would only lead to resentment and unhappiness. This mutual understanding allowed them to separate without bitterness. The idea that Megyn Kelly divorced her husband immediately after something happened is misleading. There was no single moment that caused the marriage to collapse. Instead, it was a gradual realization that their lives were moving in different directions. The divorce marked an important turning point for Kelly. It forced her to confront difficult truths about herself, her priorities, and what she wanted from future relationships. Rather than breaking her, the experience helped her grow emotionally and gain clarity about her needs. This chapter of Kelly's life shows that divorce does not always come from chaos or betrayal. Sometimes it comes from honesty and self-awareness. Ending a marriage can be an act of respect when both people acknowledge that love alone is not enough to overcome deep differences in life goals. After her divorce from Daniel Kendall, Megyn Kelly threw herself even deeper into her career. At that stage in her life, work felt safer and more controllable than personal relationships. She had already learned that emotions could be confusing and painful, while professional success followed clearer rules. If you worked harder, studied more, and pushed forward, results would usually come. This belief became the foundation of her next few years. Kelly returned her full focus to law and then, very soon, to journalism, a move that would completely change her life. That Kelly's transition from law to television did not happen overnight. It required courage, risk, and long hours of unpaid or low-paid work. She had to prove herself again from the bottom. Despite already being successful as a lawyer, this constant need to prove her worth created extreme pressure. She was learning new skills, building confidence on camera, and competing in an industry where mistakes are public and often unforgiving. While this ambition helped her rise quickly, it also drained her emotionally. Burnout became a quiet companion in her daily life. Emotional burnout does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it appears as constant tiredness, impatience, or emotional numbness. Kelly has described periods in her life where she felt exhausted, but kept pushing forward because stopping felt like failure. This kind of mindset can be very damaging to personal relationships. When someone is emotionally exhausted, they often struggle to connect deeply with others, even when they want to. This pattern explains why Kelly, during this period, did not rush back into serious relationships after her divorce. A ESSER media career took off. Kelly began to experience a new kind of stress: public judgment. Unlike law, television journalism places your face, voice, and opinions directly in front of millions of people. Every word can be criticized, misinterpreted, or attacked. This pressure creates emotional armor. To survive, many public figures learn to protect themselves by staying guarded. While this armor helps professionally, it can make personal vulnerability very difficult. That Kelly's rising fame also came with safety concerns. She dealt with stalkers and threats, which required security measures even during personal moments. This constant awareness of danger made relaxation almost impossible. Living in a state of alertness affects trust, intimacy, and emotional openness. It becomes hard to feel truly safe, even with people you care about. These experiences further shaped how Kelly approached love and commitment. Looking back, it becomes clear that her first divorce and her career burnout were connected not by blame, but by timing. Kelly was becoming someone new, faster than her personal life could adjust. She was not broken or emotionally cold. She was overwhelmed and still learning how to balance ambition with emotional connection. The divorce allowed her to focus inward and rebuild herself without forcing a relationship that no longer fit her life. This phase of emotional burnout was necessary for Kelly's growth. It taught her limits, resilience, and the cost of unchecked ambition. Without this difficult period, she may never have gained emotional awareness needed for healthier relationships later in life. Sometimes, emotional exhaustion is not a failure, but a signal that change is needed. For Megyn Kelly, that signal eventually led her toward a more balanced understanding of love, work, and personal fulfillment. As Megyn Kelly's career in television journalism continued to rise, so did the level of public attention surrounding her life. Fame brought opportunity, influence, and financial success, but it also came at a heavy price. One of the first things Kelly lost was privacy. Unlike her earlier years as a lawyer, where success happened quietly behind office doors, television made her a recognizable public figure. Strangers began forming opinions about her personality, beliefs, and character without ever meeting her. This constant exposure reshaped how she moved through the world and how she protected herself emotionally. With growing fame came constant scrutiny. Every comment she made on air was examined, replayed, and criticized across social media and news platforms. Supporters praised her confidence and directness, while critics accused her of insensitivity or bias. Living under such pressure can make a person hyper-aware of how they are perceived. For Kelly, this meant learning to separate her public identity from her private self. While this separation was necessary for survival, it also created emotional distance between her and the people around her. The demands of television journalism left little room for rest. Long hours, unpredictable schedules, and constant preparation became the norm. Kelly often had to prioritize breaking news and ratings over personal time. Relationships require consistency and presence, but fame disrupted both. Phone calls were interrupted, plans were canceled, and personal moments became rare. Over time, this lifestyle reinforced the idea that emotional connection had to wait while professional responsibilities came first. Another challenge of fame was safety. Kelly faced threats and stalking incidents that required professional security. Simple activities like going on a date or taking a walk became complicated. Trust became harder to give freely when privacy no longer existed. Emotional openness requires a sense of safety, and constant vigilance can weaken that foundation. This reality made dating especially difficult during this stage of her life. Fame also affected how people approached her. Some were drawn to her status rather than her personality. Others felt intimidated by her public image. This made it difficult to know who was genuine. For someone already cautious from past emotional experiences, this uncertainty added another layer of complexity. Kelly became more selective and guarded, choosing solitude over the risk of emotional disappointment. Despite these challenges, this period also strengthened Kelly's self-awareness. She learned what she could tolerate and what she could not. She realized that success without emotional fulfillment felt empty. While she continued to excel professionally, the absence of a meaningful personal connection became noticeable. This awareness planted the seed for change, even if she did not act on it immediately. Fame had given Kelly a powerful voice, but had also taken away her sense of normalcy. This imbalance forced her to reflect on what truly mattered. She began to understand that career success alone could not provide lasting happiness. This realization would later influence how she approached love differently in the future. Instead of chasing perfection or status, she would seek stability, understanding, and emotional safety. This phase of her life shows how fame can quietly reshape a person's inner world. It highlights the hidden cost of public success and explains why Kelly approached her next relationship with greater caution and maturity. The lessons learned during this time prepared her for a deeper and more balanced partnership later on. Meeting Douglas Brunt marked a turning point in Megyn Kelly's personal life. Unlike earlier stages of her life, when ambition and emotional distance guided her decisions, this relationship developed during a time of greater self-awareness. Kelly had already experienced divorce, public pressure, and emotional burnout. These experiences had forced her to confront uncomfortable truths about herself, particularly her need for balance between career and personal happiness. When she met Brunt, she was no longer searching for validation or status, but for stability and understanding. Their first meeting happened through a blind date, which already set the tone for something different. There were no professional expectations or public image considerations. Brunt was not part of the media world, and he did not treat Kelly like a celebrity. This was refreshing for her. He was calm, confident, and emotionally grounded, qualities that contrasted sharply with the high-intensity environments Kelly was used to. Instead of being impressed by her fame, Brunt focused on who she was as a person. However, the early days of their relationship were not easy. Kelly's public profile meant that security guards often accompanied her, even on dates. This created awkward moments that would have discouraged many people. Brunt responded with humor and patience, signaling emotional maturity rather than frustration. This response made Kelly feel safe rather than pressured. Emotional safety is often overlooked, but it is one of the most important foundations of a healthy relationship. At this point in her life, Kelly had learned the cost of ignoring emotional readiness. She was more open about her fears, needs, and limitations. Instead of hiding behind ambition, she allowed herself to be vulnerable. This honesty allowed the relationship to grow naturally, without unrealistic expectations. Both partners understood that they were building something together, not rushing toward an image of perfection. Their relationship also faced challenges related to distance and schedules. Kelly's work required travel and long hours, while Brunt had his own career responsibilities. Rather than avoiding these issues, they addressed them openly. Communication replaced avoidance, which had been a weakness in Kelly's first marriage. This change reflected her emotional growth. She no longer viewed difficult conversations as threats, but as necessary steps toward understanding. One defining moment in their relationship occurred during a disagreement that nearly led to a breakup. Instead of walking away permanently, they chose to talk honestly about their feelings and future. This conversation deepened their connection rather than weakening it. Shortly afterward, Brunt proposed, not out of pressure or fear, but from clarity. Both knew they were choosing each other with full awareness of the challenges ahead. This relationship worked because Kelly had changed. She had learned to slow down, listen, and prioritize emotional connection alongside professional success. Brunt provided support without control and encouragement without competition. Their partnership was not built on public image or ambition, but on mutual respect and shared values. Meeting Douglas Brunt showed that personal growth often follows hardship. Kelly's first divorce was not a failure, but a lesson that prepared her for a healthier future. Emotional maturity does not come from avoiding pain, but from learning through it. This chapter of her life demonstrates how self-awareness can transform the way someone experiences love, commitment, and partnership. Public figures often live with a version of their lives that exists only in headlines. For Megyn Kelly, this was especially true when it came to her first marriage and divorce. Over time, online articles and video titles began to suggest that her marriage ended suddenly or dramatically after one shocking event. These claims gain attention because they fit a familiar narrative that audiences are used to seeing: a powerful woman, a sudden breakup, and hidden drama. However, this version of events does not reflect reality. The truth behind Kelly's divorce is much quieter and more complex. One of the biggest misconceptions is the idea that her career success directly caused her marriage to fail in a dramatic way. While her work certainly played a role, it was not a single decision or moment that ended the relationship. Instead, the marriage slowly weakened due to emotional differences and conflicting life goals. Kelly has openly admitted that she was not ready to start a family at that time, while her husband was. This difference created ongoing tension that could not be resolved simply by compromise. Wanting children is deeply personal, and when partners are not aligned, emotional distance often grows. Another misunderstanding is that the divorce was painful or hostile. In reality, Kelly described the separation as respectful and mutual. There were no public arguments, legal battles, or attempts to damage each other's reputations. This lack of drama made the story less interesting to tabloids, which often rely on conflict to attract attention. As a result, later narratives exaggerated or reshaped the story to make it seem more sensational than it truly was. Headlines also tend to ignore emotional timing. People change as they grow, and Kelly was still evolving personally when she got married. She was discovering her ambitions, dealing with unresolved emotional loss from her childhood, and navigating a demanding career path. These factors made it difficult for her to settle into a life that required emotional readiness and long-term planning. Her divorce was not a reaction to an event, but a realization that she and her husband were no longer moving in the same direction. Another reason misconceptions persist is because Kelly later became known for strong opinions and public conflict in her professional life. Viewers often assume that someone who appears confrontational on television must be the same way in personal relationships. This assumption is misleading. Professional roles often require assertiveness that does not reflect private behavior. Kelly's personal life, especially during her first marriage, was far more reserved and introspective than her on-screen image suggests. The idea that her divorce happened immediately after something happened simplifies a deeply human experience. Relationships often end not because of explosions, but because of slow emotional shifts. Over time, small differences become unmanageable. Silence replaces communication, and uncertainty replaces hope. These quiet changes are harder to capture in headlines, but they represent a reality for many people, not just public figures. By understanding the truth behind Kelly's divorce, the narrative changes from scandal to self-awareness. It becomes a story about honesty, growth, and the courage to walk away from a relationship that no longer serves both partners. This perspective challenges the idea that divorce is always a failure. In some cases, it is an act of respect and emotional responsibility. This chapter reminds us that public stories are often shaped by what attracts attention, not by what is accurate. Megyn Kelly's experience shows how easily reality can be distorted when personal lives are filtered through headlines. Looking beyond those headlines reveals a story that is less dramatic, but far more meaningful and relatable. Divorce often marks the end of one chapter, but also opens a door to deep personal reflection. For Megyn Kelly, the end of her first marriage became a powerful learning experience rather than a source of bitterness or regret. Instead of assigning blame, she looked inward and asked difficult questions about her emotional readiness, priorities, and expectations. This process of self-examination played a major role in shaping the person she would become both personally and professionally. One of the most important lessons Kelly learned was the difference between ambition and fulfillment. For many years, she believed that success and hard work would naturally lead to happiness. Her divorce challenged that belief. She realized that professional achievements cannot replace emotional connection. While her career gave her confidence and independence, it did not automatically prepare her for the emotional responsibilities of marriage. This understanding helped her recognize that relationships require a different kind of effort, one that cannot be measured by productivity or recognition. Another lesson involved emotional honesty. During her first marriage, Kelly struggled to fully express her uncertainty about starting a family. While she cared deeply for her husband, she was not emotionally prepared for that step. Over time, avoiding or delaying these conversations created emotional distance. After the divorce, she understood that avoiding difficult truths only leads to deeper pain later. In future relationships, she committed to being more open about her needs, fears, and boundaries, even when those conversations felt uncomfortable. Kelly also learned the importance of timing. Love alone is not enough if two people are not aligned in where they are emotionally and mentally. Her divorce taught her that being a good partner requires more than affection. It requires readiness. This insight helped her avoid rushing into another serious relationship before she had truly healed and grown. She allowed herself time to reflect and rebuild without pressure. Another major lesson came from understanding self-worth. Divorce can often leave people questioning their value or judgment. Kelly chose a different path. Instead of viewing the end of her marriage as a personal failure, she saw it as evidence of growth. She learned that walking away from a relationship that no longer works is sometimes an act of courage. Staying in an unhappy situation out of fear or obligation would cause more harm to both partners. This period of reflection also reshaped how Kelly viewed balance. She became more aware of the toll that constant work and stress had taken on her emotional life. While she continued to work hard, she began to value rest, personal time, and emotional connection more deeply. This shift did not happen overnight, but it laid the groundwork for healthier choices in the future. Perhaps the most lasting lesson from her divorce was compassion, for herself and for others. She became more understanding of how complex relationships can be and how easy it is to judge from the outside. This compassion later influenced how she spoke about relationships publicly, choosing honesty over sensationalism in many ways. Kelly's divorce was not an ending, but a turning point. It forced her to confront truths she might otherwise have avoided. Through that process, she developed emotional maturity that allowed her to build a more stable and fulfilling life. The lessons she learned did not erase the pain of divorce, but they transformed it into growth. This transformation explains why her later relationships were built on deeper understanding and mutual respect. Living under constant public scrutiny changes the way a person sees themselves, and for Megyn Kelly, this pressure became a defining part of her identity. As her career progressed, she was no longer judged only by her work, but by her opinions, tone, and even her facial expressions. Praise and criticism arrived in equal measure, often from people who had never met her. This environment made it difficult to separate genuine self-reflection from external judgment. Over time, the weight of public opinion began to influence how she understood her own choices, including those in her personal life. Criticism can be especially damaging when it becomes personal. Kelly faced accusations, labels, and assumptions that reduced her identity to simplified narratives. Some viewers saw her as fearless and independent, while others viewed her as insensitive or divisive. These opposing perceptions created emotional strain. When someone is constantly being told who they are, it becomes harder to trust your own inner voice. For Kelly, this meant learning how to filter noise from truth, a skill that took years to develop. Public controversy also affects relationships. Friends and partners of public figures often feel the pressure indirectly. They may worry about how association will affect their own lives, careers, or safety. Kelly was aware that her public image could complicate the lives of those close to her. This awareness added another layer of responsibility and caution to her personal decisions. It reinforced her need to protect her private life, even if that meant appearing distant or reserved. Another challenge of public life is a lack of space to fail privately. Most people experience mistakes and growth away from public view. For Kelly, every misstep was amplified and preserved online. This reality made personal growth more difficult because mistakes became permanent records rather than temporary lessons. It also contributed to emotional fatigue, as there was little room to process experiences quietly. Despite these pressures, Kelly gradually developed a stronger sense of self. She learned that public approval is unstable and cannot serve as a foundation for personal identity. This realization was crucial for her emotional health. Instead of chasing validation, she focused on aligning her actions with her values. This shift allowed her to regain control over her narrative, even when criticism continued. Public pressure also changed how Kelly approached vulnerability. Sharing personal experiences, including her divorce, required courage. She chose to speak honestly rather than defensively, understanding that not everyone would respond with empathy. This honesty helped humanize her in the eyes of many and allowed others to relate to her struggles. It also reinforced a belief that authenticity is more sustainable than perfection. Through years of public judgment, Kelly learned resilience. She became more comfortable with being misunderstood and less dependent on external approval. This resilience did not come without cost, but it strengthened her emotional boundaries. These boundaries help protect her relationships and mental well-being in an environment that often blurs the line between public and private life. This chapter of Kelly's life highlights the emotional toll of visibility. It shows how public pressure can shape identity, challenge self-worth, and complicate personal relationships. At the same time, it demonstrates how resilience and self-awareness can help someone reclaim their sense of self. Kelly's journey through criticism and controversy ultimately reinforced her understanding of who she is beyond headlines and opinions. When the story of Megyn Kelly's first marriage and divorce is viewed as a whole, it becomes clear that the truth is far more meaningful than the dramatic headlines often suggest. Her divorce did not happen suddenly, nor was it triggered by one shocking event. Instead, it unfolded slowly, shaped by emotional readiness, timing, and heavy demands of an ambitious career. This reality may not fit easily into click-driven narratives, but it reflects a deeply human experience that many people can relate to. That Kelly's journey shows how personal growth often happens in quiet moments rather than public crises. Her first marriage ended not because of betrayal or conflict, but because two people realized they wanted different futures. Making the decision to separate required honesty, maturity, and respect. In a world that often glorifies endurance at all costs, Kelly's choice reminds us that knowing when to let go could be an act of strength rather than weakness. The lessons from her divorce followed her into every part of her life. They influenced how she approached relationships, how she balanced work and personal priorities, and how she defined success. Instead of allowing ambition to control her life completely, she learned to create space for emotional connection and personal fulfillment. This shift did not diminish her professional drive. It refined it. She became more intentional about the life she was building, rather than simply chasing the next achievement. That Kelly's later relationships benefited from this growth. With greater self-awareness, she was able to build a partnership based on honesty, patience, and mutual support. Her experiences taught her that love requires emotional presence as much as commitment. By embracing vulnerability instead of avoiding it, she created stronger foundations for long-term happiness. These changes did not erase the pain of her past, but they transformed it into wisdom. The public's fascination with her divorce says as much about society as it does about Kelly herself. There is a tendency to reduce complex human experiences into simple stories with clear villains and dramatic turning points. In reality, life rarely works that way. Relationships end for many reasons, often quietly and thoughtfully. Kelly's story challenges the idea that personal struggles must be sensational to be significant. Her willingness to speak openly about her experiences also highlights the importance of honesty in public life. By sharing her story without exaggeration, she offers an alternative to the polished narratives often expected of public figures. This honesty allows others to see that success does not protect anyone from emotional challenges, and that growth often comes from facing those challenges directly. In the end, Megyn Kelly's divorce is not a story of failure, scandal, or sudden collapse. It is a story of evolution. It reflects how people change, how priorities shift, and how self-understanding deepens over time. The truth behind a headline is not explosive, but it is powerful. It reminds us that the most important changes in life often happen quietly, through reflection, honesty, and the courage to choose a path that aligns with who we truly are. After graduating from Albany Law School in 1995, Megyn Kelly began her career as an attorney in Chicago. She worked at the prestigious Jones Day law firm for 9 years, representing major clients like Experian. Early in her legal career, she co-authored a paper for the Journal of the American Bar Association, a clear sign of her drive and intelligence. Yet, something was missing. Kelly was ambitious, but the traditional legal path didn't fully satisfy her need for challenge and impact. She began exploring journalism, taking an internship at NBC News in Chicago, while also freelancing for WLT-TV in Washington, D.C. With a reel she had prepared with a friend's help, she started pitching television stations, blending her legal expertise with storytelling.in in 2003. She moved to Baltimore to cover major events like the 2004 U.S. presidential election, while continuing legal work. Her analytical skills and confident presence caught the attention of Fox News executives. By 2004-2005, she was appearing as a guest host on Special Report with Brit Hume and The O'Reilly Factor, quickly becoming known for her clear, direct approach and fearless questioning. Kelly gained early notoriety covering controversial topics, including the 2006 Duke University lacrosse case. While initially criticized for casting doubt on accusations, her reporting was ultimately justified when the charges were withdrawn. This cemented her reputation as a journalist unafraid to challenge assumptions, a trait that would define her career.